Now, it has been a long time since I've needed to use a story pole, but I've got to say that if you're someone who's having a problem with the height of a stair step or the location of that particular stair step and even the ledger, or you just want to double check all of the measurements that you've made on a stair stringer that you have cut, then I can't think of any better way to do it than with a story pole. And a story pole is nothing more than a piece of lumber that has been divided into equal segments that will represent the individual height of your risers. And if you don't want to waste any lumber, don't cut the piece of lumber. Just simply grab an 8-foot 2x4 and mark the desired locations needed to represent each individual stair riser. And in our case, we are going to have 7.5-inch risers. So starting from the bottom, we're going to mark each section at 7.5 inches. And then we're going to use this story pole to verify each one of our risers by placing it next to the top of the stair tread. And you can see here where everything looks like it's working out at that section. And to check another section, you're just simply going to move it to the desired location. However, you're going to want to check the individual riser height for each step before you put the treads and risers on. And in order to do that, you're going to want to take your pattern and temporarily attach it in the position you think it's going to be located, and then use the story pole to check everything out. Now, if you remember, we marked the top or the overall height of each individual step. However, it might be better for you to lay out the story pole or to mark the location of the bottom of the tread or the top of the stringer, which would be this line here. And since we're going to be using 3/4-inch plywood or OSB, then we're simply going to come down 3/4 of an inch. And in order for you not to get those lines confused, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put some type of a mark in between to represent the width of the stair tread. And that can be done a variety of different ways. I like to just simply put a X in between there. Now that you have a pretty good idea how to use the story pole or what the story pole is going to be used for, I want to go ahead and remove the extra stringers, because you're only going to be working with one stringer at a time, and that of course is going to be the first stringer that you laid out and cut. Now here's a situation you might not run into. However, I need to point it out, and that would be to provide you with an example of what the stair stringer would look like if you cut too much off of the bottom and then place your story pole next to it. Or another situation, and this one is going to be more common, and that will be when you don't cut enough off of the bottom of your stair stringer. So keep in mind, you need to remove the thickness of your stair tread, and in our case it's 3/4 of an inch, and drop the entire stair stringer down 3/4 of an inch. And if you don't and you install the stair stringer, then you're going to end up with something like this, all the way up the entire stair stringer. And if this happens, the upper riser or the last riser is going to end up being a little smaller than the rest of them. So keep in mind, I have the ledger in the correct spot, and everything will work out fine as long as I remove 3/4 of an inch off of the bottom of the stringer and drop the entire stringer down 3/4 of an inch. However, this usually isn't what happens. Usually the stair builder gets a little confused and places the ledger in the correct spot, and then the steps are going to be out of level. They're not going to be level anymore. But how can we check this? Simply by grabbing our story pole. And here's where we can see we're a little bit off, and if we go to the next one, we're going to be off a little bit more, but you can see where we're heading into the right direction here, right? Because once we get to the top, everything doesn't look that bad. So if you have a situation like this to where the story pole at the top is close, but there are variations throughout the rest of the stringer and you end up with something like this, then there's a good chance that they'll need to remove something off of the bottom of the stringer. Now let's take a look at another common problem, and that will occur when the ledger is a little higher than it should be, but you went ahead and cut the 3/4 of an inch off of the bottom, and you end up with something like this at the top, where you can see with your story pole that you have a problem. And there's a good chance if you have this problem that the ledger or whatever you're dealing with at the top is in the wrong location. And this is another problem you could run into if you're using different sized materials. For example, you might be using 1.5" thick materials for your stair treads and 3/4 inch thick materials for your floor sheathing. And this would be a dead giveaway that you might have a problem with something like that also. And either the ledger or the stringers will need to be adjusted accordingly. So again, your story pole is definitely helping you out here because everything isn't lining up, and you can see that there's a problem somewhere. And hopefully by now it's starting to make sense just exactly how important a story pole can be for a first-time stair builder. So if you're having problems figuring out anything to do with a stair stringer, you've cut it and one of the measurements isn't lining up, then do yourself a favor and create some type of a story pole and start checking everything out to see where that problem is. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you learned something from it, or you just need to give us a quick shout out, then do so in the video comment area. Any questions, I will answer them as soon as possible.